Hi guys, Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you a cool Japanese themed pendant. Now I was doing some tests the other day. I was just kind of mucking around and playing with something, and this is the concept that I kind of came up with. Today we're going to be doing it a lot tidier. It's going to be slightly different. There's not going to be this big gaping hole over here. I wanted to drill it a certain way, but it didn't really work. The back will be finished off better, but I was playing around and I came up with this concept. Really like it, so we're going to be making that today. So to start, you're going to need a piece of white primer. So I've got a piece here that has been rolled out on my thickest setting. And then you're also going to want some liquid, some alcohol inks. Now I think that this project looks best in red. Any reds will work, but I've got a few pinata inks that look really nice. So here's the one. Two, and you do not need as many as I've got here. I just like the range of colours because it creates a really nice blended effect. But please feel free to use whatever colours you want. This pendant would actually look quite nice and green as well. And then you're also going to need some sort of an alcohol ink dabber. Okay, so I've just quickly opened up those inks off to the side. Just lay it down right in the middle so you can see. And I'm going to start off with, let's start off with the lighter colours. So that is this one. Oh, and if you're looking for an alcohol ink dabber, I got this from Linda's Art Spot, so you can find it there. You can also find a bunch of nice pinata inks there. She has a great starter kit, which is actually what got me started on this brand. So do check that out as well. Okay, and I'm just going in, I'm basically starting with the lightest colour and then moving on to the darker colours. Like so. And I'm also trying to get the white areas because I don't want any plain white areas left when I am done. Okay, and if you want, you can just grab your finger and use that to just go over the last few white areas. Just dab it onto your dabber here and then place it down. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with that. You want it to be a nice dark red. Then you want that to dry. You can use a hair dryer to speed it up. I'm going to be using my heat gun on the lowest heat setting to dry it. There we are. So that's pretty dry now, but it is still fairly sticky. It's never going to dry completely unless you leave it for quite a few hours. It's not too sticky, but a stencil would stick to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop that off to the side. Quickly give your towel a just gentle wipe to get rid of anything that might be floating around. And then pick your chosen stencil. I'm using this beautiful fern one. And what I'm going to do to prevent it from sticking is I'm going to take some cornstarch or corn flour, whatever you guys tend to call it. Just popped a bit down there. And I'm just going to brush it over the stencil. And this is just going to give it a protective coat. Okay, and you want to brush it on the stencil, not the clay. That is very, very important. So I'll just do that. Then let me just quickly blow this away. Okay, and then you should be left with a stencil that looks something like this. Now what I'd advise going and doing is just giving a very quick blow, just to get rid of any excess cornstarch that might be stuck in the gaps. And I'll bring over my piece of clay again. And is that in the middle? Yes, okay. And then put this cornstarch side down onto your piece. And I'm just gonna shift it a bit. There we are. Okay, now because I might have a bit of cornstarch on my hands, I'm going to bring over a piece of plain printing paper, lay that down, and then start burnishing this. Because I want it stuck onto the clay, but I don't want it so stuck that when we lift it up it's going to rip the alcohol ink section off. So you can see it's picking up a bit of that alcohol ink. So the cornstarch is not going to prevent it from sticking completely, it's just going to make lifting it up in a little while much easier. And the reason you don't want to apply the cornstarch to the alcohol ink part of the reason you don't want to apply it to the clay is because we're going to be applying some metal leaf now, and we want the metal leaf to stick thoroughly. So now just go and make sure you burnish the entire thing completely down. It's almost so that you have a texture. That is very important. So I'm almost done. And also keep in mind that when you're using a stencil, a lot of the time the edges are not going to come out perfectly. So you want to be aiming for getting the middle around here the way perfect. But the edges you don't need to worry about as much. Then for a final measure, I'm just going to roll it. And there we are, should be good to go. Okay, so you can use any metal leaf you want. Gold is generally the best with this project. Even better than gold is this really cool dew sundrop leaf that I have, and this is a ripped piece that I took out when I was busy packing stock, but it will also work for this project. You can see it has those really cool shifting spots on it. And if I bring over the prototype here, hopefully you can see on that metal leaf that it does have some shifting spots on it. It's not just plain gold. But plain gold will work well as well. So now I'm just gently gonna lift this off of here. And it's very floaty. So I'm just gonna aim to get it right in the middle there. Okay, and then I'm just going to go and press firmly with my fingers to start with to get this stuck down. And you can even use this to do that so it doesn't stick to your fingers. And if you have gaps, don't worry about it, just grab a bit and place it down and then stick again. But you really want to make sure that you go through and stick it down properly. So I'll just bring over that piece of paper again and burnish. And press really hard when you're doing this. And also notice that I'm holding the piece of paper in place. If you're just burnishing, your paper's going to move all over the place, and that could actually end up ruining your effect. So make sure that you hold that piece of paper firmly in place when you're working with this. And that will keep it in place while you're working. Then go and patch up any areas that you think need to be patched up. So I'm just going to go and grab a bit here. And so I'll just go and patch up any areas that I think need to be patched up. And keep in mind that the leaf is only going to stick to the parts where the stencil is. So you can generally pick up pieces and lay them down again. Like so. Very easy to do that. So I'll just go and continue doing that. There we are. So we've got pretty much everything in this middle area, which is where I'm focusing. And you'll notice that the leaf starts to really lift up on its own. What you do is you just gently start to run your finger around Don't press hard, just gently run it around. And what you can do is you can start pushing the leaf towards the outer edges, like around here. And you could actually start pressing it in over there to patch up those areas. But generally, to just get the leaf to move away and to actually start patching up any areas, you can also just start gently running your finger around and then burnishing the leaf into the places where you feel it needs to be patched up. So just continue doing that until you've basically cleaned up all the areas. Okay. Then as an extra measure, you can grab a brush and start brushing along the piece. And this will just get rid of any excess. And don't be too rough. Just get rid of the excess. Okay, and then I advise before lifting it up that you just do a very quick clean around, because you've got a lot of excess tiny little bits of leaf that you just really don't want to get on the inked part once you lift up your piece. So just make sure that you get rid of as much of that as you can. And clean your hands as well, because they're going to be covered in leaf after this. And we want the contrast between the leaf and the inked part as high as possible. So I'll just quickly do that. Okay. And then we're just going to lift. And you shouldn't experience any trouble lifting. And there we are. You can see what a beautiful contrast that has. Okay. Now bring over a piece of plain printing paper that's been nowhere near your leaf. Lay it down, hold, and burnish. And make sure to hold it in place when you're doing this. And this will just stick down that leaf onto your clay securely. Because at the moment it's a little bit fragile and could get rubbed off. By doing this, you're going to be really securing it into place. And it's going to be flattening out any texture that the clay might have left. Because, oh not clay, will have left, the stencil will have left. So this is a good thing to do. Okay, then lift it up, don't place that down again, and that should be what you're left with. Okay. I'm very gently going to trim that end there. And this end. I'm basically just going to trim away for the most part the areas that don't have metal leaf coverage. And that is what it looks like. Really pretty. So I'm just going to pop that off to the side. And I'm going to clean up all of the stuff. Okay, so the next step is going to be to roll out a piece of black primer that's been rolled out to about 2mm thick, about there. And that is about the same as the thickness of our veneer here. Okay, so now the next step is going to be to include our black piece. So let me just grab this and pop it on the tile, and also bring over your chosen cutter, and that is going to be this one here. And I just want to choose whereabouts I want to cut out, and I'm just going to very, very gently press along the edges here just to create an indentation. Not too much, just enough to see whereabouts I want to cut. Then grab a flexible blade and I want you to really warp that. Okay, now the important thing is the end of the spear is here. If you have a look at this one, this comes off basically just this way of the end. That's quite important. You don't want to be doing it right to the end and having this big gap, because we're going to be creating a bezel here, so taper off towards the end of the spear. You'll see what I mean when I'm done. Okay. And cut. Again. And so if I pull this out, that's where our bezel is going to be. So you can see it's wide at the top, but it's tapered off towards the end. Okay, but keep this here. I want to keep that in for the meantime. Then I've got my piece of black right here, and I just want to make sure that it is the right thickness, so I'm just going to trim up that end and this end of the black, and if they meet together pretty well, yes, yeah, okay, so then I want to come down this end here, and I'm going to follow that spearhead line where I created the little guideline. I'm going to follow that with my blade and trim this out the way. And then to achieve the same effect, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spearhead here, the same cutter that I'm using, and I'm just going to cut into the black. And then I use my blade to follow that line. Like so. And then I will position it like so. Okay, and it's a little bit low. I'm going to roll it out on my thickest setting. This was one setting below my thickest setting. Okay, this will just take a moment. There we go. So basically do the same. I'll just grab that. And reattach. Yeah, that fits better. Okay. So now I want you to just grab a piece of plain printing paper and try to focus on the seam between the black and the red, because we do have this sitting over here and I don't really want to burnish that in. So just focus around here and gently rub your finger up and down. The seam does not have to be perfectly removed, but you just do want to dull it a bit. Like so. Okay, and that will smooth out the black as well, which is quite important. We don't really want fingerprints and things like that. There we are. That's all nicely smoothed out. So now I'm just going to remove this. Okay, and then I'm going to just take a moment to figure out where I want this to sit. Okay, and I want it to sit just about there. Now notice that I have the black just very slightly tapered. That's also something that I would like. And I'm going to cut down firmly. And make sure you go around the whole thing and have it all firmly cut. And then you can remove this this, and that is what our finished pendant will look like. Or not finished actually. We still need to put a little something at the top here, which I will do in just a moment. So what you'll do now is you just grab your black, and let me just move the camera over this way a little bit. There we go. So you can see what I'm doing with the black a little bit more. I don't want to move this yet. So the next step is going to be to take the same cutter you just cut out with, cut into the black, and then follow that curve, like so. Okay, then we're going to be cutting a very slightly tapered piece. So, and actually I need to burnish this down onto the tile, otherwise it's gonna lift up. So give me a moment to just burnish that down. Trim that clean again, and there we go, you can see that that cuts much better now. Then cut a tapered version of this, and this could take a bit of practice to get the right sort of taper that you're after, so don't expect to get it first time round. Just going to smooth that very gently onto the surface here, and then I'm just going to see if that's the right sort of taper. I might want to mess with it a little bit, but you get the general idea. You basically just create a tapered piece and then wrap it over here. So I'll show you what I come out with when I'm finished. Okay, so here's what I think is probably the best thing to do. You insert your missing piece again, and then just gently trim out like so. Then grab your black, burnish that down so it's nice and stuck to your tile. And that was the biggest problem that I was having before, was that it was dipping in this missing section over here. So that should stop that from happening. Now just when you're doing this, just be careful not to cut your original piece, because I can see me doing that. I've done that on a few occasions. Okay, and I'm just gonna create a taper. Lift that up. And lay it against the bead, and then you basically just continue working until you get a taper that you like. Maybe this one is too thick, maybe it's too thin, maybe it doesn't taper enough. It's completely up to you. Basically just continue working with it until you have a taper that you like. Another thing you can do is you don't always have to cut out a new one each time. Let me bring you back over here. So for instance, this one, I find that it just doesn't quite taper enough. What you do is you just get it to stick down, and then just gently bring over your blade and just trim what you don't like. And there we are. I'm pretty happy with that. I quite like it. Then, as you see, I have cut these edges. Gently go with your blade and use it to gently dull the edges so that they're not so sharp, that they have a little bit more of a rounded tone to them. And that can be a little fiddly, but you'll get it. And try to avoid touching the black as much as you can. I'm just gently holding it over here, but we basically don't want any fingerprints. Then go to this and as neatly as possible try to get it out. Like so. Okay. And then I'm just going to bake it like that, and then we can introduce the backing after it has been baked for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature. Okay, so it's out of the oven. So the next step is going to take some plain black Primo that's rolled out on your thickest setting and just texture it with some sandpaper. Like so. Very easy. Okay, so now we're ready to use that as a backing. And at the same time, because we're pressing it down on a plain piece of printing paper, it will give a nice soft texture to the other side. Okay, so here's our piece, and now you might see that I did change it up a little bit after I switched off the camera. I decided that this part was a little bit too thin, so I changed that up. So I'm just going to place that down. And gently press, and we can texture it again after we have trimmed it up. But just basically go trim away the excess. It should be very easy, especially since if you're working on a piece of plain printing paper, that should be really nice and easy for you. So just carry on trimming until we've got rid of all the excess. Okay, and then I've just lifted it up, and then just gently, and this is why I'm saying you're going to need to retexture it, because now we're just going to go and pinch along these sides, like so. Then grab your texture again, and then texture around these edges. Keep it on the piece of plain printing paper throughout this whole thing, just because it makes it easier to move around. Okay, and then I always like to check from the front what that looks like, and you can see there are some bits that we need to trim off. So all I do is I flip that around, and then you basically just trim it again. And then after that, you should be almost ready to put it in the oven. Okay, and so the back should end up looking really nice and tidy, like so. Now next step is going to be to add a bail, so I'm just going to pop that off to the end over here, and I'll bring over a piece of paper here. And again, what we're just going to do is we're just going to give that a really quick texture with some sandpaper, like so. Very quick to do that. Right. And I'll just trim up this edge here. And here. Then just clean up the excess. And then I'm just going to wrap it around this. Like so. And then I've made a little bit excess there. That way I can texture that down so that we have a nice secure veil. And I'm just going to continue pressing, and now I've made a bit more than I actually need, which I did on purpose. So just trim it. And trim on the other side. And then generally you should be able to just pop that off. Then I'm gently going to tap each side, and I'll actually use my sandpaper to do that. Like so. And then I'll bring over our pendant, and I just need to texture here where I missed it a little bit. And then I'm going to find the middle, and I'm actually going to put the bail on like this, because what I want to do is I want to have two cords coming through like this, come in, loop around, and then go up again. So let me just find that section, and I'll bring over a skewer. Okay, so I'm just going to fiddle with this to get it in the middle of my pendant where I want it. Okay, then just take something and gently press to secure that on. And then I'm just going to press it a little bit flat. And now keep in mind that we do have this over here. Don't worry if we have this, because we're going to be putting pebeo paint in here, so hopefully you can see the dome there. Don't worry about it, that isn't going to matter later on. Okay, then I'm just really smoothing this onto a piece. And then also what I'm doing is I'm not keeping it completely flat. I want to I'm not keeping it completely round, I'm flattening it out a bit. Then use your sandpaper to just disguise that section there and this section over here. Okay. And then you can just gently press on this to level it out again. So I'm just going to continue fiddling with it, evening it out, making sure it's in the right spot, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're ready to put it in the oven. Okay, and then lastly we're going to be using some Sculpey Black liquid clay to clean up our one edge. So I've just put a little bit off to the side. All I'm going to do is I'm very gently going to hold this, and I'm emphasizing the fact that I'm using Sculpey liquid clay, because their liquid clay is nice and thick and definitely makes this easier. So if you have the Sculpey Black liquid clay, this is actually a really good method to use instead of the Jessima smear that I use a lot. The smear works pretty well, but if you guys are having trouble with it, this works as well. I generally don't use this liquid clay smudge because I find that it runs a lot because of the liquid clay that I use. I typically use Kato, but I tried the new Sculpey Black liquid clay the other day and it works really well for this, so I would highly recommend it, at least for this technique anyway. Okay, now we've got a little spot over here but it's going to be a little difficult to get into, so I'm just grabbing a skewer and I'm just making sure that it's nice and smooth in there to start with. Then just grab some liquid clay and gently dab it across the surface. And it will tend to smooth out on its own. Okay, and just make sure you got everything. Okay, and then with liquid clay, you always want to be making sure that you smooth along the side here, clean up any mess that you might have. And then we are ready to put it into the oven for a full hour, again at Prima's recommended temperature. Okay, and I'm just retexturing where my fingers were because I had a few spots where it dulled out. Now go and bake that, and then when we're done we're going to do a few touch-ups and then we can start assembly. Okay, so it is out of the oven and here is how it looks. We've got a slight dip in here, but that is perfectly fine. And here is the back, and here's the side. You can see that it is finished off really nicely, both of them. So this is the side that was originally just black, and here's the side with the liquid clay. Really nice and smooth. Okay, so now we're ready to apply our pebeo paint. Now please keep in mind you can put any sort of things in here that you want, but I thought that the pebeo paint really looks nice. But this is a general bezel as it is, so if you wanted to put resin over the whole piece, you could maybe colour this with a little bit of gold or pearl white before you baked your piece, and then you could put in anything you want. Experiment around with it. It is a bezel after all. So I'm going to be using Onyx Prism pebeo paint. And I've just got this balanced because with the bail on the back it's not going to sit flat, so I've just used that for that. Right, so all we need to do to start with is we really need to give this a very thorough mix. The more you mix it, the better the effect will be, so just spend a little while mixing this. I actually mixed this about 2 days ago, so I don't have to mix too much, but if yours has been lying around for a few months, possibly even a few years, spend maybe around 5 minutes or so for mixing it, because all of those particles will have rested on the bottom of the paint pot. And if you want, you can experiment around with colours. I think the black looks the best, but you could try playing around with maybe some pearl white. It'd be a mixture of white and black, maybe some gold, think like that. But I think the black looks really nice. And it's not pure black, I mean it's kind of silver dash black. Okay, and I did get a little bit on the edge of my piece there, that's fine. Not a huge issue. All I want to do to begin with is just kind of give a basic coat. And we're going to have some spills and things like that, that's fine. Okay, I'm just going to work that into the edges. Alright. Now, grab a wet wipe. And we're just going to clean up. And it will clean up really easily. You don't have to worry about anything coming off. You don't want to rub too hard on the metal leaf because it can still rub off at this point, not very easily. From just basic handling you shouldn't be able to rub it off, but if you take a wet wipe and scrub it, you will be able to remove it. So just go around and remove that excess pebeo paint so that you have a nice neat finish. And I'm going to show you a trick in a little while to get rid of any unwanted bits, but that has to happen after this is baked. Not baked, cured. Okay, now just take your paint again and very gently this time just add paint, and the goal is to kind of fill this reservoir. We don't really want it to be half empty. Okay, don't go overboard though, just fill it a little bit. Alright, okay, now I'm just quickly scraping off my skewer, getting rid of the excess pebeo paint, cleaning it off so I can use it quickly. Then all I want to do is I just want to gently swirl this around because it encourages cells to form nicely. Okay, and then I'll give you regular updates on what it looks like, but basically it's going to take a couple of hours before it's properly formed, and then from there you need to wait at least 48 hours before you start handling this. So before we do anything else on this pendant, I will leave it for 48 hours, and then when I am done with that, once it has properly dried, then we can move on to a few things. Like I want to show you how to possibly darken up this red using alcohol ink pens, and how to make this black pure black, because we're just going to be putting a matte varnish over it with no resin, and because of the surface effects we can't sand it, so we need another way to make that black. But in the meantime, just leave it, don't touch it, don't mess around with it too much. You can go in every once in a while if you see an area really plain with not really many microparticles. Just go in and swirl it around, and that will encourage it to play around with the rest of the paint. But just leave it for about 36 hours and you'll see the results. Okay, so it's only been about a minute and you can see that the cells are already starting to form. Any leakage that you see around here, don't worry about it. Generally I find that it actually tends to turn really dark black and the metallic particles tend to focus right in the middle. So don't worry about that, and even if you do get some of these silver particles, we'll be able to remedy that at the end, so don't worry about that. Just let it develop as it needs to develop. Okay, and you can really see they're starting to develop into really nice round cells, and the areas around here are losing some of their metallic structure. What you can also do if you want is you can go in and gently scrape away a fair amount of that pebeo paint. It might not stay out completely, but that will get rid of some of it, and just leave it. So here is what it starts to look like after about half an hour of it being out, and you can see that those bubbles are starting to get a little bit larger, and what I'm hoping is that these black parts are not going to get larger, they're going to get smaller. But we'll have to see. You can see there the paint is starting to cure, so if you wanted to go in and do swirls with your skewer, if you wanted to do that, you could do that at this point. But I'm probably just going to leave it and see how it develops. You'll find that the bubbles will start to get larger. So I'm going to leave it now for around 24 hours, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like then. Okay, so I've let this dry for roughly 24 hours, and the pebeo paint is still a little sticky to the touch, but it is dry enough that you can start working on your pendant. It is not dry enough though for you to start wearing it or anything like that, so just be careful when you're working with it. Now, you can leave this exactly the way it is completely up to you, but let me just use a brush here to show you. You can see that the black here is not completely black. There are some gold spots that got stuck on it. We have some areas where the silver pebeo paint leaked, and also we have some areas where the silver pebeo paint leaked onto the red. And also you might find that the red is not bright enough for you as well. So this is a completely optional step. If you don't happen to have alcohol ink pens, then you most certainly do not have to do this. But here are the pens that I use for this, so you can see the brand there, and I get them from Craft Online. Can you see those? Let me move that, see if I can get them to focus. There you go. So you can get those on Craft Online, and so I want to show you how to use them. So we'll first use it on the red. So grab it, and it has a fine end and a broad end. And all we're going to do, and you want to be careful when you're doing this, is we're just gently going to draw over those areas where we had the silver. And this will remove some of it, and it will also just draw over the top of it so it's not so obvious. It will also brighten it up, so let me just continue over here. I like to generally give my piece one coat. Be careful to draw around your leaves though, because you don't want to get alcohol ink on your leaves. And again, as I said, this is completely optional, but it is something that you can definitely use to brighten up your piece, because alcohol ink does dull in the oven for sure. And there you can see it, that has brightened it up a fair amount. So I would colour all of the red. I give it about one coat. If you want it to be really bright, give it 2 coats. That's actually what I did on the prototype here. It's brightened up quite a bit. So I'm going to go and draw ahead, and when I've finished this side I want to show you so that you can compare the 2 sides. Okay, and there we are. I have finished colouring this side. Now I'm not sure if you can tell the difference. It is a very slight difference at the moment. The more coats you give it, the more obvious the difference will be. Let me just draw a section over here. It's a very gentle difference, but it definitely makes a world of difference. So you can see it's a little bit more obvious when it is wet, so let that dry for a moment. But you can see the difference here between that colour and that colour. So if you do have alcohol ink pens, I do highly recommend it because it just brightens up the whole thing. And so I'm going to colour this edge over here, and then I'll show you what to do with the black. There we are. Now we will take our black pen, and again we're going to do it on the fine side, and we're going to draw over the black. And this will hide any imperfections such as metal leaf that might have got on. It won't hide bubbles or things like that, but it will hide any scratches maybe you have, or in this case a lot of the metal leaf that will have accidentally got on. Because it's very easy to accidentally get a bit of metal leaf on. And the thing is, you can't really sand it because you've got these pieces over here that if you sand, you will remove the metal leaf entirely. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure that I do this edge here. And then I'm just going to colour in here a little bit where the moon paint is. Okay. And then up top here as well, I will go into this dip here and clean up that moon paint. And now I would not advise using paint, because I'm sure some of you will ask whether or not you could use paint instead of alcohol ink pens. I wouldn't advise it. And also I wouldn't advise using normal alcohol ink either with a brush, just because I don't find you have as much control, and I find that it spreads a lot more, so I wouldn't really advise that. If you don't have alcohol ink pens, it's just better to skip this. Okay, so we're just about done. Make sure that you got everything. And more silver. And you might want to give those areas a second coat. So if you're on a budget, I would highly recommend just getting the the black pen, because you can use it in a lot of different projects, whereas the other colours, if you got a red or a green, those are a little bit more specific to your projects. But you can see that's darkened up the black quite a bit, but you do need to seal it. I have also done the sides along here because we have had a few little specks on there, and I also did it on the back because we had a few specks on there as well. Okay, so now we want to seal it, and you can use resin if you want. I'm going to be going with matte varnish today. If you're using resin with pebeo paint, you need to leave it for at least 2 months before you put resin over the top of this, just simply because it takes that long to fully cure. So I'm not going to be actually sealing it. I'm going to leave that and just let it cure for about 48 hours before I even start wearing the piece. But we do need to seal the alcohol inks. So I'm going to be using Liquitex matte varnish. So again, if you choose to seal the pebeo paint in any way, make sure you leave it for about 2 months before sealing it, because otherwise I find that it can start to take on a yellow effect. So I'm just going to grab a very small brush here, and I'm just going to dip that into my matte varnish, and I'm just checking if that brush is clean, because a lot of them the alcohol ink stains, but some of the time I can get a little bit of the alcohol ink out by putting it in the varnish. So there we go, that should be fine now. Okay, so I'll just dip that into the matte varnish and then very gently start brushing it across the surface. And the reason I'm going for a matte finish is just because the pebeo paint is going to finish with a gloss already, and so I want a contrast between the pebeo paint and the outside. But we do need to seal it. You have to seal it in some way. You can use gloss varnish, you can use matte, you could even use Renaissance wax, but I would recommend leaving the pebeo paint to cure for about 48 hours before attempting to buff your piece. Okay, and I'll just continue brushing this varnish across the surface here, and then I will also varnish the sides and the back, anywhere where you put the alcohol ink. Okay, so here is how it looks now with the matte finish, and it basically looks the same, just that that liquid alcohol ink is sealed in, and it will now be safe to wear. So I'll just put this to the side, and I'm going to bring over our cords that we're going to be using. And so I've got 4 strands of bugtail here, and then I've got another 4 strands for the other side, but we'll work with that in a minute. Okay, and let's see. Okay, then I also have one of these ivory colour, beige, light beige colours, and this really nice crimson, just to highlight the goldish colour and the red colour in here. So what you want to do is you just want to take all of those cords and I just want to bring them all up to the same length. Roughly. And then we're going to string this through, and this is only one side of the necklace. Everything I'm doing here, repeat again. Okay, we'll string that through like that. Then separate these out into 3. So let me just put this down that side. There we are. So separate that out, 2 in each, and the same on this side. Try to make sure that you get the same cords for each. So I'll just do that quickly. Which one's that one? Okay, and I've sorted that out. So now we are going to plait. Okay, and now we've got them all separated out, so I am going to take them and I'm just going to pair them up together. Just grab this one goes here together, that's one strand, it's another strand, and this is another strand, so we have 3 in total. And this is a little fiddly to get started, but once we get started it will be fine. Okay, then start plaiting, but I'm just going to bring over some Tic Tac just to stick this down to the tile so it's not moving all over the place. and that should hold it somewhat in place so that I can start plaiting. Like so. And then just continue plaiting until you reach the other end. Okay, so I've just stuck this down quickly while I get my pieces together. So I'm going to be using these little cordings. And that's how many I should need. Just take that off. Okay, and now the trick here is to just grab any. And actually, before we do that, we do want to trim it. So I'm just going to pinch that. This bit's always the fiddly bit for me. Okay. And I'm not going to get that all in there. Just going to grab 4 pieces. Pop that into the crimp. And close it. Then grab some more. That into the crimp. And press it closed. And everything I'm doing on this end you will repeat for the other end. There we are. Okay. I'm just going to use the Tic Tac again to just stick that down so it doesn't unravel or anything like that, while I grab a head pin and I'm going to make a nice small loop like so. Open it up, pinch this again, grab this, and I'm just going to pop all of these on. And this is also fairly fiddly. There we are. Then just get them nice and down together inside that loop. And close. And then once you've got it all together, you can breathe a sigh of relief. Just make sure you do close that properly though. Okay. Then I'm going to bring over a cord cap, a bead cap, a cone. There we go. That's the right name. And just press that over the end. Okay, and I make a loop. And I'm just going to give it a quick wrap. Okay, and then we will attach our clasp with a nice small jumper. Open it up, pop on half of my clasp, and there is our one end done. And here's what it looks like from the back. So you can see that the plait definitely started off better over here, but that's important because you want it to be facing up. If it was like that, you could see that it's not going to hang right. So if it looks like this, that is correct, so don't worry about that. Okay, so that is our one side. I'm now going to go and do the other side. Okay, and here is how it looks. So there, can you see that properly? Yes, there we go. So that in the end is how it turned out. So I'm pretty happy with how that looks. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, please leave this for about 48 hours before attempting to wear it or sell it or anything like that, because that pebeo paint needs to dry completely first. But once it's kind of dry to the touch, you can start doing the stringing and sealing and things like that, and then you can just leave it somewhere for about 48 hours just to dry, and then you can start using it. So, I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. I certainly did. I really love the technique where you use the alcohol inks on the back and then apply metal leaf to it. It just has a really nice effect. I think it would look really nice if you maybe changed the red up for green. That would also look really nice. And also keep in mind, you don't have to use pebeo paint in the basin here. You can fill that with resin and all sorts of other little bits and pieces. And also keep in mind, you don't have to apply these techniques directly to this project. Please apply this veneer that I've showed here to any project you want. As I think I said before, I'm not sure, but it would make a really nice bracelet as well. You could do it with jars, ring dishes, all sorts of things. So play around with it and see what you like. And as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.